Hello there, everybody, and welcome back to Circling Seattle Sports on Converge Media. You can see we're back here. Well, I am, at least here in the Black Media Matter studios. We got Bel here, so that's good. We'll take that, right? Bel Garcia back with us every week. It's the I always am so surprised at what time of the year it is, and I mean I spare you, but we are coming up to spring. You know, the end of spring training's wrapping up. The NFL free agency just opened up today. I've got the phone ready in case something breaks, but who knows what's going to go on there. The Storm off season's kind of dragging a little bit. The Sounders are underway in the regular season. The Kraken are in the thick of a playoff race, which is crazy to say, and only their second year. The Reign are in their preseason. They're working their way through that. But the regular season starts in 13 days. The Seawolves are 4-0, and the SeaDragons have won their last two. So things are busy. Things are getting busy. We're here to get through all of it. Beginning with our Seahawks, and this, Bel, I don't know if you saw it, but the Geno Smith news broke while we were in the Mariners segment.
Yes.
And I was like, hey, man, you couldn't have done this just a little bit sooner. So we've got details on that deal, and it breaks it down a little bit because I believe some people saw the money and they were like, whoa. It's interesting to see how this all works out, and it's actually pretty team beneficial. So we're going to go right into our Seattle Seahawks news straight away as NFL free agency has just opened up. And the quarterback position is locked down, at least for the next year, to be exact. So why don't we go over to you, Bel, and look at the Seahawks segment.
Yeah, so as you mentioned, news broke while you were recording last week. So it was kind of interesting. I thought the same thing. Why couldn't have this been right before recording so Chuck could have caught it? But anywho, we do have the details on the Geno Smith deal. So Seahawks QB Geno Smith's incentives are tied to his 2022 stats in 5 categories. Per source, $2 million each for 4,282 yards, 30 touchdowns, a 69.755% completion, and a 100.874 passer rating, an 80% playtime, and 10 wins per playoffs. 10 wins.
That's and playoffs.
And playoffs, yeah. Extra $5 million if he hits them all. So that's hitting them all in terms of playoffs or hitting them all in terms of games.
Whole thing there. Basically, what this deal is from the grasp that I can get from this is that this is a deal. I mean, you look at all these numbers, right? It's like very exact. 4,282 yards, 3 touchdowns, the completion percentage of the playtime. This is and then the second part here where the only guaranteed money is in year 1. That's $12.7 million. Injury only until next February. If he's released before then, no more money will be owed to him. So this is a deal that says, hey, great year. Here's $12 million to thank you for that and the effort that went into it. Do it again. If you can do it again, great. More money for you. And then something that was key that we posted a quote about from Pete Carroll before the deal actually dropped, but we posted it afterwards, was that he was asked whether or not, because it seemed this offseason, right? It very generally seemed like the team was going to get a deal done with Geno Smith. That didn't seem like an issue. He seemed to want to be there. The Seahawks wanted him back. But Pete Carroll was asked if, considering the draft picks that the team has, if they still would draft a quarterback in the first few rounds, even if they had signed Geno Smith. And he said, yes, we can do anything that we want. So you look at this deal, right? And the first year is guaranteed, and it's only a 3-year deal as well, which is something that we talked about in terms of term, right? I don't doubt it, honestly. I would just hope it's not that number 5 pick or that number, I believe it's number 20 pick. Honestly, I would prefer to not use one of those first rounders on a quarterback. I would prefer to load up on defense heavily in those first few rounds. But yeah, that's all that is it's you look at the incentives that are tied to that deal, as well as the guaranteed money. That deal is a thank you for what you did last season. Do it again, kind of thing. What do you think about it? I mean, we've seen a few deals break with quarterbacks. Like you and I joked about Daniel Jones. Jimmy Garoppolo just is getting a deal done with the Raiders. I know Tua Tagovailoa just had his opt-in picked up. What did you think of the money and looking at some of those incentives for Geno there?
Yeah, I think the way you put it is a very good way to put it. Like, you did really well this first year, just kind of continue to do what you did that year, and then you'll continue to get these incentives. So the 80% play time, is that would obviously depend on injury, right? So like if he were to get injured then and not meet that 80%, is that how?
Yeah, I think the injury is something that factors in there as well. But I'm sure it's like I'm sure. I think it's just all like, we saw that what you did last year. Is it sustainable? Can you do it again? Was this just a flash in the pan sort of thing? Where it's like, if you get outplayed by whoever we bring in, whether they bring Drew Lock back or something, and then he loses his time, it's like, okay, you only played 60% of the snaps. I'm not giving you that money, So I'm not sure on that. I think there was a thing. Injury only, there's a 12 million. I don't know. Yeah, I'm not entirely sure, but I'm sure it's just that kind of covers all of it. It's just, we want you to do that again.
Right. Yeah. So it's like with all these incentives, because this is a lot more incentives than I'm used to seeing. I don't know if that's the same for you. But it just feels like it's like okay, prove you can do that again, like run it back, and then you'll get more money.
Yeah, especially with how specific they are, right? It's not like 4,000 yards, 60%. It's basically what he did last year, and it's like, all right, let's see it again. Yeah. So, but yeah, with drafting a quarterback, and we've got the draft picks number, the official list of picks next here, and I want to have you look at that. But it was nice to see the $12 million against the cap is pretty good. If you're going to get the same Geno Smith that you got last year, again back this year, and I mean we saw the salary cap number at least yesterday was around $20 million, but then with the move they made today, it kind of freed up some more. But you have to account into the amount of money that the draft picks get. So it's not like Seattle's not going to go out and have a shopping spree. It's not going to happen. But I mean, you've got a good amount of picks here, and if you do it right, like you did with the last year's draft, you could end up with some starters. So why don't you look at the draft picks?
So before I go into the draft picks, do you mean to say that I shouldn't be refreshing my Twitter TL to see any Seahawks updates anytime soon?
No, I will. Again, that's what this is for.
Okay, we'll go into our draft picks here. They have been released. Seattle will have the following picks in this year's draft. First round, number 5 and number 20. Second round, number 37 and number 52. Third round, number 83. Fourth round, number 123. Fifth round, 151 and 154. Sixth round, 198. And seventh round, 237. You mentioned not wanting to go for a QB there in 5 or 20, but where do you see a QB falling in our draft?
It's very interesting with Carolina trading up to number 1, right? There's Carolina number 1. I think Indianapolis is number 2. I could be wrong. But basically when that Carolina trade happened, it said, okay, at least 2 quarterbacks should be taken. And it kind of gives you an option. I'm hoping for Will Anderson personally. Jalen Carter's got some. We've seen Seahawks get guys who have had issues in the past, but I would just personally like Will Anderson. Second round, sure. One of those picks. I just first 2 in the first round. I think there are too many glaring issues on the defensive side of the ball. Plus, you want to get younger there and have sustained success there. I just don't think it's worth it to risk on any of these guys, and I don't know if there's really a surefire guy, honestly. There's been a lot of discussion about Anthony Richardson. CJ Stroud's in this draft, and I haven't heard a lot about him. Will Levis is a guy that people have liked, but I hadn't heard of until a little bit ago. So I don't know if there's like the surefire selection. I'm not an NFL scout, obviously, but second round is where I would wait till.
Okay. And I know we have news about this, so I'll hold off on just my opinion on where we should go with the draft. So we'll move on here. On the 9th, the team has cut Gabe Jackson and Ben Burkervin. That move frees up $6.5 million in cap space. Gabe Jackson was viewed primarily as a starter, but essentially split time with Phil Haynes last season. On the 10th, the Seahawks are one of a few teams that have been speaking with, can you take a guess? Bobby Wagner. The Chargers and the Cowboys have also reached out to Wagner. I'll pause there because I know that we've spoken about Cody Barton and him not really filling the shoes too great. So is that what you see being a better fit, is just to bring back Bobby Wagner rather than to fill that slot with a draft pick?
It's tough because, well, I mean, he signed that big deal with the Rams and he gets some of that, So my mind goes to money wise, right? Okay. It's like, how much does Bobby want? He's at this stage of career where he did say he prioritizes winning. So you can take the Chargers out of that, I guess. Cowboys too. I know they're not going anywhere. But I think it just comes down to money. I know that Quandre Diggs has done some great Twitter recruiting with a bunch of guys, and then Bobby changed his Twitter header to a skyline picture of Seattle. So I think they want to get it done. I'm sure Bobby Wagner, as his own agent, is considering his own options. But I have to think that some of it comes down to money. Bobby knows his worth. It's not like he had a bad season last year necessarily. Obviously the Rams are clearing house. They traded Jalen Ramsey. And they have a bunch of other guys, I guess, that are on the trade block. So I don't think that the move to get rid of Bobby was any indication of anything. I think they're just clearing house. So I think a Wagner move would just come down to money. I think it's just about the money.
And as you mentioned, I don't think if he wants to go to a winning team, the Chargers isn't Austin Eckler going to have conversations about leaving also?
Yeah. So that's a problem. That's a pretty decent part of their offense.
Yes, and I won't even go into the Cowboys, so we'll move on here. Shelby Harris may be released as well or moved. Harris had a cryptic post on IG. A fan commented about staying in Seattle, to which Harris replied, "Not my choice." So I don't know. It sounds like maybe he could want to stay, and of course that might not pan out that way. So on March 13th, then we found out that they did cut Shelby Harris. Seattle had explored possible trades for the veteran defensive lineman, but the move saves Seattle $8.9 million against this year's cap. So I guess the not my choice was pretty clear there.
Yeah, and it was interesting to see that, whenever there's this cryptic stuff and so it's not my choice, that's where I guess they were exploring trades for the guy. But I don't know. I know that when we do, there's a reason I like to add the inactives when we do the show, right, for the respective games, because you'll notice some guys who show up and they're healthy inactives, and you're like, okay, you just not do well in practice this week? Or you like when the guys aren't actually legitimately injured, or maybe they pop up with an injury that we didn't know about. Harris was, I know he had a couple of things where he was inactive. I don't think he necessarily impressed this year. And I have to think that with one of those draft picks, Seattle does address defensive line. And so Seattle get younger and potentially cheaper, depending on where they're at with that pick. So I guess it makes sense, and fair enough. They explored trades for him. They tried to get something out of him. But interesting. I wonder if this is a plan for a free agent move, or is this we want to get younger and better with the draft kind of thing? Because Seattle's going to spend at least one of their top 4 picks with a defensive lineman. So it makes sense. I know the guy was all excited because he played his first ever playoff game with us and all that. So someone will pick him up. I know someone will.
We move into some league news here. As you mentioned, the NFL offseason is heating up. On the 10th, Eagles allowed Darius Slay to seek a trade. The Eagles' 5-time Pro Bowl corner has been made available. That one is kind of shocking to me just because I feel like Slay is such a key part to the Eagles defense. So curious to see how that pans out. On the 11th, some more Aaron Rodgers drama if you hadn't gotten enough. The Packers Jets, there's trade reports on the Packers and Jets. The deal was nearly made. Teams now waiting to hear if Aaron Rodgers will accept trade to New York or retire. So in the news this morning about Jimmy G, the Jets were possibly interested, but they were on a wait and see. So I don't know if Jimmy G signing with the Raiders is any indication of maybe Aaron to the Jets, but I guess we'll wait to find out. Report hours later says that both sides are still waiting on Rodgers' plans before they agree to a deal. Now, this trade to New York or retire to me, are those really the only two options? Is a stay with the Packers not on the table?
I don't think he wants to be there anymore, and I think they're sick of him. I know that I don't know who it was. Someone in the Packers organization was like, oh, well, he could come back if what we want to happen doesn't happen. And I was like, so even that wording tells me you don't want him here. I don't think either side wants him in a Green Bay uniform next year. So I have to think those are the only two options. I know you mentioned Oakland, and there's that stuff earlier. Oakland, Las Vegas, whatever. I haven't heard anything about that outside of when he was like, oh, Devontae can buy me a house. Nothing. So unless they're a dark horse in this, well, and they just signed Jimmy. Yeah. So
they just signed Jimmy. Yeah.
Never mind. Yeah. I think he's going to New York, and he's going to follow in Brett Favre's footsteps. And then maybe at some point he'll go to the Vikings and all that weird stuff. So
we'll wait to find out. I think the offseason and Aaron Rodgers news is always interesting until it's not. So on the 12th, Jalen Ramsey was traded to the Dolphins. Former Rams star is headed back to the Dolphins for the 2023 third round pick and tight end Hunter Long. Ramsey will get an additional $25 million, and the Dolphins agreed to fully guarantee his contract for 23 and 24. Those are the most notable headlines about the current offseason. Did you have something to add?
No, I'm waving goodbye to Jalen Ramsey. He could go rot in hell in South Beach and enjoy that.
Damn. Okay, well, we'll move on to.
I don't like the guy. He's annoying. He was DK Metcalf's backpack in that game down in LA. So
I mean, it will be nice not to have to see him in the division anymore. So
he was so excited when he picked off Geno in that game in week 19. They're not that long, in week 18, and then he posted pics where he was like flipping off a fan. He was all like tough guy, and they lost the game. I was like, whatever, dude, whatever. Anyway, spring training, moving our thoughts to happier thoughts and not Jalen Ramsey. I want to remind people to not take so much stock in spring training. I mean, the first game that I'm going to talk about is a tie. Let's not get too up in arms about it. The main thing is storylines, right? So first game that we're going to go over, March 8th, Mariners at Dodgers. I say at, even though they're all in the same relative area. A tie, a 2-2 tie. Ooh, shocking. Our player of the game, outfielder Alberto Rodriguez, 1 hit, 1 run, 2 RBIs. Rodriguez came in as a pinch hitter and hit a 2-run homer to tie this game up. And then the game essentially ended after that. That is a thing they can do in spring training. Even they can cut the game short if both teams are like, hey, you guys want to just end it? Yeah, and then they'll just end the thing. Excuse me, they haven't really done that except for the tie here. March 9th versus Team Canada. This was before the World Baseball Classic knockout games. Well, the group stage games began. The Mariners beat Canada. So the Mariners are officially better at baseball than the entire country of Canada, I guess. A 5-3 score. Our player of the game, infielder Caden Polkovich, 1 hit, 1 run, 2 RBIs, a 2-run go-ahead homer. Ultimately proved to be the difference there as the Mariners beat Canada, or effectively it's just what happens when the Mariners play the Blue Jays here in Seattle. All of Canada comes, and it's basically you're playing Team Canada. March 10th versus the Cincinnati Reds. The Mariners destroyed the Reds 11-3 in that one. Our player of the game, catcher Tom Murphy, the Murph, 2 hits, 1 run, and 3 RBIs, including a solo homer on the day. We then roll over to March 11th at the Colorado Rockies. You can see there, I'm really smart, and I flipped the logos. So the Rockies are on the bottom, and the Rangers are on the top. March 11th at the Rockies, a 4-2 win. Our player of the game, catcher Cal Raleigh, 2 hits, 1 run, 1 RBI, and a triple for Big Dumper. A Big Dumper triple is not something I expected, but it happened. And then March 12th versus the Texas Rangers to close out the week. There's a game going on right now, but we can't give you the score of that because by the time this airs, it'll already have ended. The Mariners won the game against the Raiders 11-10. So look at this, Bell. How often does this happen that we have 3 catchers win player of the game in 3 respective days? Our player of the game, catcher Brian O'Keefe, 2 hits, 2 runs, and 4 RBIs. A monster day for O'Keefe, including a 3-run homer. Go over here quickly to, where'd it go? It's okay. I will dig it up. Our player of the week for this, again, this is all about storylines. And one of the interesting ones is catcher/outfielder Cooper Hummel. Hummel, 3 hits, 2 runs, 7 total bases, 3 RBIs, and 1 walk over the course of the past week's games, including a double and a homer. Quickly here before I let Belle get her piece for player of the week in. Again, at this point, especially, this is all about storylines. Jared Kelenich's been playing really well so far. Can he keep that up? Cooper Hummel is a guy that the Mariners acquired for Kyle Lewis in a one-on-one deal, and it was like, okay, you've not really done much. I know that the Brewers traded Hummel to Arizona a year before the Mariners acquired him, so it's like, okay, what do you really got? And Hummel hasn't really been quiet this spring. He's had a solid spring so far. So right now we're kind of seeing, especially with so many guys gone for the World Baseball Classic, like there's no Julio, there's no Gino, there's no Matt Brash was with Team Canada. So there's a bunch of guys who are out right now, Haggerty, Matt Festa. No, Haggerty's around. I lied. That's right. He was gonna, and then he didn't. You're looking at individual storylines, like what guys are going to remain on the bench for this Mariners team. There are a bunch of candidates. I want to see if I can actually find what the score is of this game right now, because they're playing against the Angels right now. They are tied. Oh, well, they're in the top of the first, and they're 0-0. So, but yeah, it's about storylines. Tommy Listello was a guy who missed a week due to a forearm injury, and now he's back in the lineup. So you're looking at, we kind of already have an idea of what's going to go on with the Mariners lineup to begin the year. It's just kind of about some of those guys who you're uncertain of. We're going to kind of see more of them and figure that out. Belle pointed out for her sort of player of the week, great thing that Root Sports did in the game against the Rockies on the 11th. So Belle, I'll let you discuss that a bit.
Yeah, so it is Women's History Month, and just days after International Women's Day, they did have an all-female broadcast team for the first time. So it was great to see those ladies do such a great job, and just looking forward to hopefully seeing more of that.
Yeah, and it was really cool. I mean, at least from the Mariners side of things, having Angie Mentek, Jen Mueller. Well, Shannon wasn't on the broadcast, but I know she's around, and those are all women I look up to in this industry. Have all been really helpful and receptive when I've asked for tips, and stuff like that. When I've been around, Jen actually encouraged me to bother her more this year. So we'll see that. But it was really cool to see that, those are all very qualified women and just journalists in general, just not even including the fact that they're women. So that was really cool to see that Root did that. And I know that there were some folks from the Rockies and the Astros and a few other teams that joined for that broadcast. So that was really cool. And it was great to see that they could do that because, all those teams being in one spot for spring training. So really cool to see that. And I hope we can see something like that during the regular season. But again, with, different schedules and such, makes it a little bit hard. Please don't drop news while I'm doing anything. Okay. So the Mariners, as we head into the next week and one of the last weeks of spring training, have the slate continues here. They sit at an 8-6 spring training record, 9-6 if you include the Canada game, and 9-6-1, and if you include the tie in the Canada game. They'll play 7 games over the course of the next week. March 13th at the Angels, 1:10 p.m., which is happening right now. March 14th versus the Royals, 1:10 p.m. March 15th at the Athletics, 1:05. March 16th versus the Giants, 1:10. March 17th versus the Padres at 6:40 p.m. March 18th at the Cleveland Guardians, 6:05. And then March 19th is a split squad day for the Mariners, 1:05 p.m. at the Rangers. And then the other part of the group will play 1:10 versus the White Sox. So, there's that. That's kind of your slate here. And again, try not to focus as much on the end score, more so on the individual storylines, player by player wise, and how they're doing and what they might be developing. So speaking of development, we don't have much Storm news. Things have been quiet over the last few weeks, but wanted to check in with some of the AU sports participants. The Storm have a few players who are participating in AU sports. So why don't we look at Teresa Plicence and Jasmine Walker?
Yeah, so Teresa Plicence has had 2 games in which she's had 7 points, 6 rebounds, 1 assist, and 4 blocks in one, 14 points, 6 rebounds, 2 assists, 1 steal, and 1 block in the other. Jasmine Walker has played 3 games, one with 7 points, 5 rebounds, the other 19 points, 6 rebounds, 1 block, and lastly, 12 points, 2 rebounds, 2 steals, and 1 block. Those are pretty promising numbers there. It looks like they're each getting on the floor and getting a few different statistics. So definitely,
yeah, they're both averaging 12 points a game, and again, I don't know if it's blind optimism or what, but I'm excited for this Storm team. I know that even there was a great quote a friend of mine sent to me from Lauren Jackson, where Lauren, was talking about, obviously it's going to be tough to replace Sue. No one's Sue Bird. But she had really high praise for Jade Melbourne, last year's draft pick that Seattle signed this year to the roster officially, and said, if someone can do it, it's Jade. I'm like, all right. If someone's going to know too about Sue Bird, it's Lauren Jackson, So it's interesting to hear that. But again, I don't know. There's a bunch of players that, Seattle's taking waivers on. Plicence is someone who hasn't necessarily been a starter and kind of been more of a bench role. Jasmine Walker is someone similar to that. Just kind of, maybe needs to change the scenery. Arella Garantes is someone as well, just hasn't been able to figure things out and has been lighting things up in the Euro League. So, there are a bunch of players that Seattle's taking flyers on, and I don't know. I think they've got it to them where it's like, hey, we're going to prove everybody wrong for not giving us perchance the right opportunity, or maybe a new change of scenery will help that, and they play well. I personally think that's going to happen. So we're going to go with that. I don't know. I have hope for this season, so we'll see.
Yeah, I think coming to a franchise like the Seattle Storm, who's only talked about in great words, and then of course Sue's legacy, Lauren Jackson's legacy, like I truly believe that as an athlete you would come here and want to kill it. So also holding optimism. And that about wraps us up for our Sounders. If you don't have any more comments there, or I'm sorry, for our Storms, so we can lead off into our Sounders now.
It is a tough one. How do I put this? Certain parts of the fan base tend to freak out anytime anything bad happens. Like the Sounders, this is week 3, right? This is week 3 of about 34 games that the MLS regular season contains per team. Seattle lost 1-0 to a FC Cincinnati team that they've never played before in their home building. They've never traveled to Cincinnati before, and they're already just a solid club, And again, this is week 3. and this 1-0 loss. A bunch of people lost their crap over. They were saying it looks just like last year, which last year, I mean, there were matches like this where you just couldn't find offense, but it's week 3. Your road form in the last 9 games is winless. You haven't won on the road in the last 9 games, so that's not necessarily good. But I'm not really worried about it. So on the 11th of March, the Sounders lost at FC Cincinnati 1-0. Our player of the match, outside wingback Alex Roldan. Roldan, a 7.6 match rating, 80% passing, and 2 chances created. Unfortunately, Seattle was unable to capitalize on any of those. Seattle did have technically a quote-unquote, air quotes, goal in the 89th minute by Yamar on a header, but it would be ruled, it would be taken away because of the fact that there was a foul in the buildup. So the referee said, nope, let's look at that again. And they took it away, and Seattle was unable to do anything in the 14 minutes of stoppage time that were allowed. So unfortunate there, but again, it is week 3, and I'm not really worried about it. Hebert was out, and he'll be out with perfectly segues into our injury-related news. On the 8th, it was announced that Hebert suffered a hamstring strain, and he will be out for 2 to 4 weeks. Freddie Montero started the match against FC Cincinnati. Raul Ruiz did play the last 30 minutes or so. But with Raul kind of getting back to full strength, I'm not too worried. But it's just interesting to kind of see the fallout. It's like, oh, they lost. I think maybe some people got too into the way that they had played the first 2 matches, where they put 4 on Colorado and then 2 on Real Salt Lake. It's just going to happen that way. I mean, 1-0 against a club that started out pretty well, and in their home building, I'm not really worried about it. Obviously, there are some things to correct, and even the players noted that. But calling it, that just looks like last year. I know there was some pushback on that from Brian Schmetzer in particular. So I don't know. I'm not too worried about it. Whatever, it's your first loss. It's going to happen. Get it out of the way. But just seeing some of the reaction to it's like, oh my God, oh no, and there's just all this freak out. It's like, hey man, got a long way to go. These guys play till the fall effectively, so not too worried about it. That's about it outside of a bare hamstring strain. The Sounders record sits at a 2-win, 1 loss, 0 draws record. They sit at 5th in the league as a whole, 2nd in the Western Conference. We look ahead to their next match, March 18th, back at home versus LAFC. Some people view LA as the best team in all of the league, so this one might be a little bit tough. I say might be a little bit. It'll definitely be tough. That one is in Lumen Field, though, at 1 p.m. Pacific time. It'll be a great early seasons test for the Sounders to see where they're at, really, against a team in LAFC that, is coming off of winning MLS Cup and still looks great. So that'll be a big, big opportunity for them and the Sounders to really sort of figure things out and see where they're at. So with that, speaking about seeing where they're at in big tests, are Kraken again sit in the thick of a playoff race. They played a few teams over the past week, not Anaheim, that are in the thick of their playoff races as well. Dallas fighting to be atop the Western Conference. Seattle's not too far behind points-wise, but with the losses, they've kind of knocked down a pair. And they play Dallas again tonight. So, Bel, why don't we look at our Kraken here?
Yeah, on March 7th, they played the Anaheim Ducks here at CPA. That was a win, 5-2. Our player of the game is forward Jared McCann with 1 goal, 1 assist, and 2 points. On the 9th, they traveled to, actually, these are all home games. They were back home versus the Ottawa Senators. That was a loss, a 1-point loss, 5-4. Our player of the game is Vince Dunn with 1 goal, 1 assist, 2 points, a 4+-, 2 shots, 3 blocks, and 1 takeaway. And then on the 11th versus the Dallas Stars, an overtime loss, 4-3. Our player of the game was Vince Dunn once again with 2 points, 2 assists, 2 points, 2 shots, 3 hits, and 1 takeaway. Anything to note before we move on to player of the week here?
Well, firstly, as some kind of new-ish we're doing, go over photos from the past few games. We've got Brian Saldana over the first 2 games there against Anaheim, and then Ottawa in this one. John Gibson of the Ducks is trying to see. I mean, you can see it there if you look a little bit close. It's kind of tucked away, the puck right against near his head. Daniel Sprong's shot there clipped against his catching glove and spun around like a coin in the air before landing in the goal there. So Brian caught that as the puck is in action. And then here against Ottawa, Adam Larson trying to clear the crease here as Philip Grubauer is down on his knees. Seattle would lose that game to Ottawa, unfortunately. And then Matt Bermudez, Bell knows something about Matt. Really like this shot. Matt had his first game on the glass, so congratulations to Matt on that. In here, he catches Ryan Donato's goal celebration after tying the game up at 2. Really big game for Donato, who scored in his first game back after being healthy scratched the last 2 games prior to this, and scored the game-tying goal in a clutch moment. He always has a knack for that sort of thing. Really cool to see that there. You can get some of the reaction from the crowd behind it. Just to look at those games, I mean, you beat Anaheim by 3 goals. You should have beat them. I mean, Anaheim's a bad team, arguably the worst in the NHL. So you took care of business, not really much to note there. Ottawa and Dallas. I say both of them because they're similar games here, and they're similar to the game that Seattle lost to Boston a little bit ago in a really, really tightly contested contest. Good one. But with Ottawa and Dallas here, Ottawa and Dallas are still kind of fighting for their spot. Ottawa is really fighting for their spot. They don't have one yet, at least officially. Dallas will have a spot, but they're still in the thick of things, and they're probably looking to lock up the conference. And Seattle's right up near them as well. These were games that were really close, but Seattle made little mistakes here and there, and good teams will take advantage of those mistakes. So the thing with Dallas, though, is that you played them again tonight, just a few days after you lost to them. So there's some things where I know that in the locker room, after losses, obviously, I'm sure you could be, oh, boo, and this and that. But the locker room seemed pretty optimistic and ready to kind of just get back to work at it against a really talented Dallas team. So, I mean, there were positives to take from this game. I'm not going to sit here and tell you it was all negative, honestly. Dave Haxtell said it after the Dallas game. He said, we scored enough. That wasn't the problem. The problem was that we let in too many. And that ended up being the case. That game went to overtime, so Seattle did get the extra point from that game against Dallas. And they dominated possession in overtime. They just never really got a real shot off on Jake Ottinger. Jake Ottinger, one of the best goaltenders in all of NHL. So you can't just throw stuff at him and expect it to stick. He's a really good goaltender. You got to be better about it than they were, and you got to get to the net more. And this is what I'm talking about. I have, it might be months now. I think it was weeks. Maybe months, where we looked at players defensively for the Kraken that were just left wide open.
We've got net front where they're all in a line.
Oh yeah, I did not. Yeah, that one. They did not get that one. But you can see here on the this was the Beniers and Eberle got the goal on this one. You can see they're right in front of Ottinger. They're right in front of him. That's what you want to do in that. You don't want to be able to give him an opportunity to see the puck when it's sent up from the player at the point there. I believe that's Vince Dunn at the point. And then eventually they moved out of you see how they go from right there in the middle. They clear space when the puck comes down, and then a stick is on it and it gets redirected. That's a goal there. We go over here to Ryan Donato's goal. Daniel Sprong right in the way, jockeying for position in front of Ottinger, and then Donato is also battling a defenseman and is in the way, in the viewpoint of Jake Ottinger. And then that would eventually, you can see here, Ottinger's looking, he's not even looking at the puck. He's looking over there. You've got 3 stars all confused. Daniel Sprong's occupying a guy behind the net, and Donato is able to just whack at that one. Ottinger never sees it, so generating that pressure net front is such a big thing in general. That's something that Seattle should be better about as a whole, because it leads to goals like that Donato one where it just a puck ends up right in front of you. The goalie either doesn't see it, is sprawled out, or just doesn't know you're there, whack at it. That's something that Seattle should be focused on. But against great goaltenders like Unger, you're not going to just beat them just slamming shots away. It's not going to happen. So that's something to note. But yeah, I saw your pick here, and it just made a lot of sense for a guy that's had a career year, who's earned an extension, and has been able to contribute in all those games. Even in this game against Dallas, despite the fact that Dallas put up 4 goals, Dunn had a 4+-, which is pretty impressive for a defenseman, especially in a high-scoring game like that. So why don't we look at the stats for Vince?
Yeah, so our collective player of the week here was Vince Dunn. He had 1 goal, 4 assists, 5 points, a 4+-, 4 shots, 4 hits, and 3 blocks, and he's currently on a 9-game point streak. So something that I usually reward, as always, is consistency, and this guy has just been super consistent lately. Exciting to watch, and I was torn. I did kind of want to give it to Wenberg this week because I think he just hit his 300th point, right? So, and he had a very nice assist in that loss against Dallas. So, but yes, Vince Dunn is someone that has been just showing himself on the ice, and you can't really dismiss what he's done. So.
Well earned an extension, that's for sure. I'll help you out here. Tonight is Pride Night, so the Kraken will be celebrating Pride Night. I'm hoping that there's no players that decide to not wear the warm-up jerseys. I don't want to have to deal with that whole thing there. Really quickly, we'll get a picture of those that they'll wear tonight against Dallas in warmups, and then those jerseys will be auctioned off to benefit the One Roof Foundation. There you go. You can see the front there. See if we can get some closer looks, as well as the anchor on the side of it that was designed. There is merchandise in the Kraken team stores, as well as our website. A lot of that stuff on the Hockey is for Everyone nights goes really quick. You can see the different colors there in the S are different hands joining together. And then speaking of hands joining together, the anchor logo there is 2 hands forming a heart as well. So that's always really cool to see what the designs are for these Hockey is for Everyone nights, especially I've got the Black History Month one here. So always really cool to see that on what the artists come up with. So looking ahead, the Kraken sit at a 37-win, 22-loss, 7 overtime loss record. They are 3rd in the Pacific Division with 81 points. Looking ahead, March 13th tonight versus the Dallas Stars is a 7 p.m. puck drop. March 16th at the San Jose Sharks, so they go on the road for a quick stop. There is a 7:30 p.m. puck drop. March 18th versus the Edmonton Oilers. Seattle returns home for a Saturday game at 1 o'clock and a divisional opponent. Edmonton, one of the better teams in all of NHL. They actually beat the Bruins the other day, and Boston's kind of been far and above the best team in the league. So that was a little bit of a surprise. Big divisional matchup there. I think I kind of hinted at it before, and I think I've said it in prior weeks. Every point for the Kraken matters as the rest of the regular season plays out. I mean, they are in a playoff spot right now, but you have the division is even in reach. Vegas is going to keep winning, unfortunately, but the things aren't over yet. Despite the fact that you're holding a playoff spot doesn't mean anything until that's all locked in officially. So we'll stop over here in our OL Reign, who are in their Portland preseason tournament, where they're playing the U.S. Women's National Team, U23 team, Racing Louisville, and the Portland Thorns. They began that on the 12th versus the U.S. U23 team with a 3-0 victory. Our player of the match, forward Bethany Balser. Balser 2 goals, so we're accounting for 2 of Seattle's 3 goals in that one. That game was not streamed or televised whatsoever, so we're just kind of going off of what the admins on Twitter say, and they said that Boats had 2 goals, so that makes an easy choice there. On March 7th, the club announced its 32-player preseason roster. We'll go here. The goalkeepers, Claudia Dickey, Laurel Ivory, and Fallon Tullis-Joyce. No surprises there. On the defenders here, Lou Barnes, Ryan Brown, Alana Cook, Sam Hyatt, Shea Holmes, the Reigns draft pick. one of the draft picks, Sofia Huerta, Jimena Lopez, Alyssa Melanson, Phoebe McLaren, who you see pictured here on your screen, and Emily Sonnet. No real surprises on the defensive side of the ball there. Midfielders, Angelina, who is still on the season-ending injury list, and so it continues to recover from that knee injury she suffered last year that ended her season. Olivia Athens, Marley Canales, Jaden Edwards, who is a new pickup. She is local out of, I believe it's Everett. I want to say Everett or Edmonds. It's one of the E cities. And she was placed on waivers and cleared waivers, and the Reign decided, hey, come and check out camp, and we'll see what you got. In addition to Edwards and everyone else previously listed, the other midfielders, Jess Fishlock, Rose Lavelle, Luani, who has still not joined the group yet. She's working through the visa process, and when that happens, she'll join the Reign. Quinn, Nikki Stanton, Olivia Vanderyacht, and Natalie Vigiano, who is the other Reign draft pick from this past year's draft. And then the forwards up top, Bethany Balser, Elise Bennett, who you can there we go. Elise Bennett, who is pictured on the screen there. Jordan Heitema, Ziara King, Veronica Latsko, and Megan Rapino. You'll note there, with over the forwards, there was no Mackenzie Weinert. Weinert, former University of Washington Husky. She scored in the friendly match against Club America. Tough to see that. I know that with the season coming up, there are roster decisions to be made, but score a goal in very, very limited playing time. You thought maybe she'd get a shot. She still technically could hang around until the World Cup comes, and the Reign will need those players. But for now, she's not on the roster. As I mentioned, Luani is expected to report to the team once she receives her P1 visa. Excuse me. And then Jaden Edward. Oh, sorry, not Everett or Edmond. She's a Mill Creek native. And she joins the team for the preseason as the only non-roster invitee after playing 5 years at the University of New Mexico from 2018 to 2023. Before I move on, not really any surprises here outside of Weinert. You'd like maybe some more forward help. But outside of it, I mean, I'm relatively happy with it. It's just going to be interesting with the depth that you have to see players rotated in and cycled in. But obviously that rotation and that depth isn't going to be an issue when the World Cups comes around. A bunch of players will be missing. In league-related news, on the 11th, the NWSL officially announces the return of the Utah Royals. The Royals were a team back around when the league started, and they folded. They will be rejoining the league, and I mean, this was something that was talked about months ago, even like a year ago or so. But the NWSL makes that official. They will begin play next season as the league's latest expansion team. Looking ahead, the Reign will close out the preseason tournament with 2 matches upcoming. March 15th versus Racing Louisville is a 5 p.m. Pacific time start. And then March 18th at Portland Thorns FC is a 7:30 p.m. start to finish out that preseason. And then in case you forgot, the beginning of the regular season is March 26th at the Washington Spirit. Now we move over to our Seawolves, who are 4-0 for the first time in franchise history.
Yes, they had a match on March 11th versus the Houston SaberCats. They won 24-12. Our player of the match is AJ Alatimu with 16 points scored, 4 penalty goal kicks, and 2 conversion kicks. So the Seawolves continue to roll, and we hope that just continues into the season. We have some team news here. On the 7th, 3 Seawolves players named to the MLR First 15 of the week for week 3. Open side flanker Nakai Penny, 1 7-point try scored, 18 tackles made, and 30 ruck arrivals. Number 8, Riekert Hadding with 2 7-point tries scored, 131 meters run, and 9 tackles made. And fullback Duncan Matthews with 1 try scored, 12 ball carries made, and 179 meters run. Riekert Hadding, a named player of the week. He had 2 tries scored, 131 meters run, and 23 ruck arrivals.
So those were obviously with the date. Those were for last week against Dallas. I mean, we posted our final score And then someone was like, "Oh, well, everybody beats on Dallas." I was like, "I don't care, dude. We always post the score, you know." With this one against Houston, before we continue here, I want to go back. We've got Liz, our photographer, Liz Walters, photo of the match here. We've got Pete Malcolm putting down the first try of the game for the Seawolves. They're kind of getting squished. Those hockey. Those rugby guys, man, don't know how you do it. You know, there was a match earlier in the season, I believe it was week 2 against Atlanta, where it's really freezing cold. The turf was cold, and I just hear a guy, you know, you just hear flesh on flesh, you bow, and I'm like, nope, ow. I would die. Hey, man, Seattle looks really good. I mean, this was something I talked about in the preseason. You know, with that core intact. I talked to you last year about it when we thought the season was technically over. I was happy with the way things had gone, and that if a little bit was adjusted, they could be in a better position next year. They get into the playoffs. You know, I go over this every week, but I mean, they keep winning, you know, and the formula remains the same. And they did so against a team that they faced in the Western Conference Final last year in a rematch, and was undefeated to this point. Seattle looks legit, man. I mean, you know, you've got the veteran core. Alatimu was last year's leading scorer. He has been the one taking the kicks the last 2 weeks, after Jordan Chait was the one the first 2 weeks who led the league in scoring. Charles Elton, who is making his MLR debut with the Seawolves, is leading the league in tackles. Rieger Hadding, you know, player of the week. Nakai Penny is a guy who's been with this team since they won the first few titles. Duncan Matthews is really talented. I mean, there is talent all over the board here, whether that's veteran cores that have been with this roster or sort of new guys in Chait and Elton who are contributing. So you've got a bunch of things going on here, and it's hard it's hard to bet against the Seawolves to win their third title. Honestly, again, obviously, I say it in the articles about them. Got to be cautious, right, Bel? I mean, any team, even like anybody, Sounders. You know, the Sounders were that. The Kraken in their early season were undefeated at this point. You still got to be careful because it's a long season. But it's hard not to be excited, because what mattered to me most was that it looks sustainable, right? You see some games where some seasons where teams come out and they're just doing this incredible stuff for the first few weeks or a few weeks span, and you're like, wow, like they look unstoppable. And then it's just not sustainable. You know, things fall apart. They're not able to keep that pace up. Like the Kraken during the month of November, when they scored like 9 goals against the Kings, 8 against San Jose. That was a lot of fun. That was great. That's not going to happen. They're not going to do that in March. It's going to be really hard to see that. I know Dallas beat Buffalo last week 10-4. I digress. The way that they're winning looks sustainable. They've got the fly halves in Chait and Alatimu, Shane Barry in the wings that they drafted this past year to be able to make the kicks off of the penalties that they get. They've got Rieger Hadding, you know, the captain, the team captain. He still is a beast. You know, maybe he'll end up near the top of the league and try score it again this year. It's hard to not be excited, especially considering the fact that this winning, the way that they're winning, looks sustainable. So that's my feeling on it. I'm just excited. But I say all this excited stuff, and then they have the week off. So it's like, oh, I guess we get to cool off a little bit.
Hopefully they don't do any cooling off.
Yeah. Well, I mean, take a break and all, but yeah, don't cool off from your hot ways. So why don't we look at that record and where they stand in the league?
Yeah. So again, undefeated 4-0 and 17 standing points. They are first in the league and first in the Western Conference. So I think a lot of people might have thought that the way that they got to the MLR championship was a little iffy in terms of performance for them. So I think they're just proving everybody wrong on how well they can do.
Honestly, I would be happy for them to do that all the way to a third title. So we move over here to our SeaDragons, who maybe these guys are building something. They beat the San Antonio Brahmas at home, a 15-6 win. Kind of a grinder there. Not the prettiest score in the world, but a win's a win. I mean, I don't really care, right? Player of the game, could have gone with a few here. Morgan Ellison had a solid game. He leads the league in rushing. Bendinucci had a solid game, but not quite player of the game material. I went with Jacob Pearson again, wide receiver, 8 catches for 76 yards. He continues to lead the XFL in receiving yards and is top in receptions as well. Our photo of the match here by our photographer on site, Emma Otteson. You can see Ellison celebrating the touchdown that really put the SeaDragons ahead, and they were never really in doubt of a loss there, but that touchdown really kind of put them ahead, and they just never looked back on it. In the win, quarterback Bendinucci became the first quarterback in XFL to pass for 1,000 passing yards. And I got to admit to you, it was hard in this team early on. Hard on Bendinucci. I mean, he still had an interception in this game. So, and that's still something that they can fix is the turnover battle. What does Pete Carroll talk about on different teams? We talk about it's all about the ball. And that could be true in any form of football, right? We could look at college, high school. If you're not protecting the football, my coach would be pissed at me personally, going to a day. Coach Kohler would rip me a new one. I know Curtis knows, can probably speak up on that with coach and taking care of the ball and just Kohlerisms. But no, I mean, they're taking care of they took a little bit better care of the football. Bendinucci leads the league in passing yards. Morgan Ellison leads the league in rushing yards. Jacob Pearson's at the top in receiving yards. Josh Gordon's up there as well. Blake Jackson's up there. And I believe receptions. So you've got some solid stuff there, pardon me. And I know the defense kind of struggled the first 2 weeks. But in those first 2 weeks, and even in that loss to St. Louis, the first 2 weeks, and then the win against Vegas, they got their team the ball back, which, whatever happened before doesn't matter if you're able to get your team the ball back and they win. Seattle's offense wasn't able to win in weeks 1 and 2. In week 2, they got the ball back. Seattle did actually end up getting the go-ahead score, but then the defense allowed St. Louis to get a field goal. So whatever. I mean, only allowing 6 points in any game, no matter the opponent, is an impressive feat. So I was really happy with the defense and the overall performance. I mean, the defense only giving up 6 points. And then, with Ellison being the leading rusher and Bendinucci and the pass catchers, if you're able to figure out that offense on a consistent basis and find a balance, I mean, that Seattle's offense was something that a lot of XFL fans talked about this offseason before we began the year. So I don't know. What have you been able to catch SeaDragons wise, Bel?
Yeah, I think I feel about the SeaDragons like I felt about, like we said we should feel about the Sounders. Excuse me. Don't panic. Like, it's the start of the season. I know that first game looked rough, but definitely we knew that they were going to improve. I know I had my doubts also about Bendinucci at first after seeing those first 2 weeks, but just it's great to see that he's earned that honor of 1,000 passing yards. So I think they can only improve every week and just go back, watch film, and see where, like I said, where they can improve. So definitely, if they do hit a bump and get a loss here and there, I don't think it's any cause for concern.
Yeah, and then just, at least with this being a 10-week season, like all of this matters. And so having that quick turnaround is going to be important for them. So they sit at a 2-2 record on the season. They are at 500 finally. They're third in the XFL North, so it's still tough. I mean, with there being only 2 divisions with only 8 teams, I mean, it's going to be hard to jockey for position. Looking ahead, they have a tough matchup on a Thursday night, March 16th, versus the Houston Roughnecks. Houston is 4-0, so it's not going to be an easy feat if Seattle wants to continue the winning. Kickoff time is at 6 p.m. Pacific time on FX, or if you've got ESPN Plus and it's not blacked out for you. Houston, that's a game. There will be a lot of Seattle homecomings there. Quarterback Brandon Slivers as the former Seattle Dragons quarterback from the XFL in 2020. Buddy of mine, Race Porter, is the punter there. He went to O'Day. He went to UW. And then, there's one more person I'm forgetting here. But anyway, it's a big homecoming there. Before we wrap up with our star of the week, I want to go over here and, we did all this really cool stuff a few weeks ago with the Seattle Sports Commission's Seattle Sports Star of the Year Awards. We've got our Seattle Sonics section in here in our notes, but hardly ever put anything in. We'll go in with this clip that I spoke with Detlef Schrempf. So let's say hi to Detlef.
Own right, Detlef Schrempf. How are you doing tonight? I'm sure you've done a few of these. How is it just to be in this room with so many talented individuals?
Well, it's always a great occasion. You catch up with some people you haven't seen in a bit, and I think it's just a wonderful evening honoring the people that made an impact in our community.
I'm sure you've seen them, but I know at Climate Pledge Arena they have 2 rooms that say NBA locker room. Is that obviously the excitement for the Sonics has sustained forever, effectively? But do you have any sort of extra hope knowing those exist and there's talk about once the TV deal ends, or is it just kind of continuing to stay level-headed and prepared for when that moment finally arrives?
No, I think we as a city have done an amazing job, keeping the hope alive. It's just been frustrating to not really get rewarded for that from the NBA with at least some communication around what it would look like. It's always been pushed off, and now we're again here waiting till 25 to hear what expansion would look like. And, that's disappointing, but I think we still have hope. In the meantime, we're losing 15-plus years of NBA basketball, so hopefully it will still happen.
Appreciate it. Thank you for stopping in.
It was honestly really awesome to talk to Detlef Schrempf there. So a few more of those to still come out, getting those out kind of on dates that permeate to those respective players that we spoke to. But now we head over to our Seattle Star of the Week here. Bel and I both collectively agreed that we would go with the Seawolves, starting off 4-0 for the first time in franchise history. Again, it's very exciting to look at the Seawolves team and see the makeup of the players on this group, whether it's the veterans that have been with this team, some of the younger talent that's going to help out, the guys from Austin that came over to help this group in the offseason after Austin had its respective issues with whatever's going on over there. Jordan Chait and Charles Elton, who are making their MLR debuts and continuing to contribute to this team. Elton leading the league in tackles. Chait, I don't think he's still leading the league in points, being at around the top there, at the fly half position, being able to take advantage when Seattle wants to get those points off the penalty. The Seawolves look good, and the rugby is a lot of fun to watch anyway. I mean, if you like football and you like seeing dudes hit each other, I mean, rugby is great for that as well. Starfire is a great atmosphere. Seattle won the first 2 titles in MLR, so it's not like you're not going to watch a winning team. And they honestly could add a 3rd title here this year. So with that being said, this will end March 13th recording of CSS on Converge. Until we see you next week, take care of yourself, be well, and do whatever you can to make today a great day.